Alright guys, so in this video I'm going to be talking about some more under the radar teams here as we enter the 2024 college football season. 2023 is behind us, a lot of narratives are being drawn here, and these are just teams that seemingly have slipped through the cracks a little bit in terms of national dialogue, but whether it's an easy schedule, returning quarterback, maybe lack of previous success, these teams, they're just not very relevant right now, and I do think a lot of these teams could have success in 2024, beginning with Kansas State. Now, you might be wondering, Kansas State, they lost their starting quarterback, Will Howard, to Ohio State. Why would they be on this list of possible under the radar teams, possibly even make the playoffs, winning the Big 12 and getting the auto bid? Well, they do have a young, extremely talented freshman QB, Avery Johnson, who's expected to step up. They've also got a returning running back who rushed for over 1,200 yards last year. A lot of returning talent on this team. Taking a look, you look at the narrative for Kansas State, very easy schedule. UT Martin at Tulane might be a little bit challenging. Tulane, they're getting some good transfer portal receivers. Arizona at home, that's going to be a big game. But, at BYU, at Colorado, Houston, at Iowa State, Arizona State, Oklahoma State, Kansas, Cincy, and at West Virginia, these are winnable games, and it feels like the Big 12, the winner of the Big 12 is probably going to have 3 or 4 losses. It's just a mosh pit of a conference, and I think Kansas State, based on their previous record, based on the talent that they have returning, based on their young quarterback, they've got the pedigree to be the auto bid and win the Big 12 and possibly make the playoff, which would surprise a lot of people. Not many people talking about Kansas State football right now. Seems like their only relevancy was Will Howard transferring from them. They're kind of going under the radar, but I will say a lot of different teams could win the Big 12. It is a mosh pit, but Kansas State is a team I think is going to be better than people think going into 2024. The next under the radar team, it is Boise State. Now, last year, Boise State started off very poor. However, they fired their head coach and they went on an absolute tear. And how about the transfer portal QB that they got, Malachi Nelson? I will say I haven't heard great stuff on Malachi Nelson, his performance in practice at USC, but this is still a top 5 overall player who only will be a sophomore. It's only going to be his second year in college. That is an elite talent for Boise State, and with the group of 5 getting an auto bid, could Boise State build on the back half of their 2023 season to possibly getting that auto bid, maybe winning the Mountain West Conference? You look at the schedule, it's a weird start. At Georgia Southern on the road for them. At Oregon, back-to-back road games, very likely a loss to Oregon. You got to beat Georgia Southern. They get Portland State at home, Oregon State at home, Nevada, San Diego State, Utah State, and Washington State all at home, and then they're on the road at Hawaii, at San Jose State, UNLV, and Wyoming. Of course, the Mountain West, these are all winnable games. Boise State, I think they're going to be very good in 2024 with their interim head coach. In the second half of the year, they played really well. They've got a great pedigree. We know Boise State, one of the most winning programs in college football in the past decade. I would expect them to be in the hunt to possibly get that group of 5 spot in the 12-team college football playoff. Moving on to the next under-the-radar team, it is Virginia Tech. Now, Virginia Tech is another team that finished the season very strong. They didn't finish with a great record, but they won their bowl game. Brett Pry, the defensive coach. How about their quarterback, Drones, the dual threat, possibly entering the transfer portal? They were able to get him back, and there's a Virginia Tech team, another team with a very manageable schedule. It's the second half of the year in 2023. If they can build off of that momentum going into the new year, and you take a look at the schedule in the ACC, at Vanderbilt, that's a weird road game to start. Marshall at home, at Old Dominion, that's a weird non-conference schedule. So their non-conference is at Vandy, Marshall, and then Old Dominion, and then they get Rutgers at home. Wow. So two road non-conference games, and then they also face a Big Ten opponent, but those are all winnable games. And then you're talking about Virginia, at Duke, at Miami. That's going to be tough at Miami, no doubt. At Stanford, at Syracuse, Boston College, Clemson, and Georgia Tech. That is a manageable schedule You're getting Clemson at home. Imagine that game being on a Saturday night, raucous environment at Lane Stadium. Virginia Tech is a team. Imagine they go 8-4, 9-3, possibly finish ranked. Under the radar team that finished strong. They've got a returning quarterback who's a dual threat, really good college QB. They also have returning receivers. We will see what happens with Virginia Tech, but they're a team that I'm watching kind of under the radar going into 2024. The next team, it is Miami of Florida. I know what you're saying. Every year Miami, everyone thinks they're going to do something. They always have good players because of their NIL situation. But this year, it really is now or never for Mario Cristobal. And everyone obviously thinks it's going to be the same thing. They're going to go 7-5, maybe 8-4. They're going to be underwhelming. But if you take a look at their schedule, if they can beat Florida on the road in week 1, it's not going to be easy. It's a rivalry in-state game. But if they win that game, Florida A&M, Ball State, at South Florida, those are all winnable games. They could very easily start 4-0, and you're talking about a weak ACC schedule. You're not even facing Clemson, and you get FSU at home. Now, it's not a great home field advantage for Miami, but Florida State's going to be breaking in a lot of new players. You would think that would be a potential upset win, but either way, this is a very manageable schedule. You did get Cam Ward, kind of a weird situation with him, possibly declaring for the draft, and then I guess not. Either way, he's at Miami now, his final season, and I would expect the U to win at least, let's just say, 8, maybe 9 games, but they do have the potential based on their talent. They bring in great players. They could very easily win 10 or 11 games with this schedule, but they're going to have to show me. There's no way I can predict that right now, but the way it sets up, they could potentially have a really good 2024 year. The next under-the-radar team, it is SMU. Now, SMU probably had the worst finish to the season that any team could have. Their quarterback, their starting QB, Preston Stone, broke his leg, and then they became completely irrelevant. They lost their conference championship game with their backup, and then they got crushed in a bowl game. You take a look, 2024, they get Preston Stone back. It seems like SMU is kind of irrelevant, even though they had a really good year last year because of their situation moving to the ACC. Nobody really knows what to make of them. If this team was still Group of 5, they would be getting serious hype to possibly make the playoff. You look at their schedule, they start off, I think that's Houston Christian, so an FCS team. You get Toledo at home, and then looking at a lot of games to be determined, but the ACC, it's very manageable. At Duke, at Louisville, Boston College at home, Cal at home. You get Florida State at home. That could be a raucous environment. And then those other teams, Pittsburgh at Stanford, at Virginia, and BYU at home. All winnable games. I think SMU, if their quarterback is back healthy, they could be an under-the-radar team that could play really well in the ACC. Their first year jumping from Group of 5 to Power 5. It'll be interesting to watch. The next under-the-radar team, believe it or not, it is Penn State. Now, Penn State, it seems year in and year out, their issue, they always lose to Ohio State and Michigan. Well, I do have some good news for Penn State. They don't even face Michigan this upcoming season with all of the realignment, and they get Ohio State possibly at home in their whiteout game. This is a very manageable schedule. If you look at how hard the Big Ten is, your only tough road games at Wisconsin, at USC, even those are manageable. I know a lot of people are saying, well, week 1 at West Virginia is going to be tough. But Penn State under James Franklin, they don't lose those games. They always beat teams that they're supposed to beat. So I have confidence they'll be able to win that game. You've got 2 MAC schools. You've got Illinois at home, UCLA at home, both easy wins. At USC could be challenging. USC should be good next year. They're going to have a revamped defense. Miller Moss at QB, but it's winnable, even though it's on the road. At Wisconsin, they do have a tough middle of their schedule. At USC, off week. At Wisconsin, then Ohio State at home. I think they'll easily beat Washington. I'm not expecting Washington with their transfer portal exodus to be very good next year. And then at Purdue, at Minnesota, Maryland at home. This team I expect to make the 12-team playoff. It's kind of been like a funny thing with Penn State. They would always be in the 12-team playoff if we actually had a 12-team playoff, but unfortunately we haven't had one. But they are another team I am watching that's kind of under the radar for 2024. But guys, those are just some under the radar teams, teams that have easier schedules. Kansas State's a team I'm watching. Boise State, another one. Another one I will throw in here that I didn't talk about Memphis. Memphis is going to be really good. Right now, they're actually my pick to be the group of 5 team that makes the playoff as the auto bid, as the 12 seed. Memphis returns a ton. They've got a veteran QB. They just came off a 10-3 year. Nobody's talking about them. A lot of people don't even know they went 10-3. And they've got, obviously, being in the American, a watered down American, a very manageable schedule. So they're another team that I would honestly put over Tulane. Everyone's talking about Tulane. They've had so much success recently. I would look at Memphis possibly as a team to watch as well, along with Boise State. There are some other teams in the Mountain West I'm looking at, like UNLV. But either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on X. Link to that's always in the description.